There's a man standing on a rock in the middle of a river. Cold water is up past his knees, and he's wearing a suit of armor with blades welded all over it, spikes, razor edges, head to foot. He looks less like a knight and more like a man who turned himself into a weapon. He's standing very still. He's waiting to be attacked. And then it comes, up out of the black water, a body as thick as a barrel, and it wraps around him and squeezes, because this is the only thing it knows how to do. Only this time, every time it tightens, it drives itself down onto the blades, and the river starts to run dark, and it won't let go. Now hold on to that picture. Freeze it right there, the man, the water, the thing dying slowly around him. Because here's the question. How does a man end up standing in a river, dressed in knives, fighting something the size of a fishing boat? He'll tell you it's his own fault. He'll tell you he made this thing years ago, when he was young and stupid, and he skipped church one Sunday morning to go down to the water and fish. And killing it is the part nobody warned him about. Killing this monster is what curses his family for the next 9 generations. So let me take you back to the boy, back to the well, back to the small ugly thing he pulled out of that river and should have drowned when he had the chance. This is one of the oldest monster stories in England, and unlike most of them, it comes with an address. The river is the Wear in County Durham in the northeast. The family is the Lambtons, and they're not a story. They were real, they were powerful, and centuries later their descendants would become the Earls of Durham. You can find them in the history books, in Parliament, on maps. And sitting right in the middle of that real documented family, like a stone in a shoe, is a dragon. They called it a worm. Not a garden worm, that's the trick this story plays on modern ears. In the old language, a worm was a serpent, a dragon, and the tale of the Lambton Worm was almost everything you'd want from a proper dragon story. A stupid young lord, a monster that ravages the land, a witch with a terrible bargain, and a fight in a river. But it has the one thing the others don't. It has a bill at the end. A price that came due, not once, but for 200 years. Let me tell you the story the way County Durham told it first. Let's start with the boy, because everything that follows is his fault, and he knows it. His name is John Lambton. He is the heir to the Lambton estate, the son of a great house on the banks of the Wear. And by every account, young John is a bad piece of work, wild, rude. The kind of privileged young man who has never once been told no, has decided the rules are for other people. On Sunday morning, while the whole valley is waking up to church, John Lambton does what he always does. He goes fishing instead. He takes his rod down to the river, and for a long time he catches nothing. Nothing at all. He curses, he swears loudly enough that the people heading to mass can hear him, which is rather the point. And then something takes the line. He hauls it up expecting a fish, but it isn't a fish. It's a small, dark, worm-like thing. No longer than his forearm, slick, black, no scales you'd recognize, no proper fins, and down each side of its head, where a face should be, there are holes, a row of little round holes, like something had punched them there. It is, by every telling, one of the most revolting things he's ever seen. An old man happens to be passing on his way to church, because in these stories, there's always an old man passing. He looked at the thing on John's line, and he goes quiet. He says something like, "That's no fish. That bodes no good. You've caught the devil, boy." John Lambton doesn't care. He is 19 and he's annoyed and he wants to get rid of it. So he pulls the thing off the hook and he looks around. There's an old well nearby, just a stone well at the side of the field. And he drops it in, plops it down into the dock. Here's the little splash far below. He thinks nothing more about it. Then he goes home, and not long after, something in John Lambton changes. Maybe it's age, maybe it's shame. But the wild young man takes the cross and he leaves, off to the wars in a far country, to fight for 7 years and try to become a better man than the boy who spat curses across a river on a Sunday. He forgets all about the thing in the well. The thing in the well does not forget about him. And here is what happens to a monster you throw down a well and walk away from. It grows. Down in that cold black water with nobody watching, the little worm gets bigger and bigger. The water turns foul. People who draw from the well start to notice a taste, a smell, and then they stop going near it altogether. Something is living down there now, something that has outgrown its hole. And one day, it comes up. By day, they say it would lie coiled around a great rock in the middle of the river, its head resting on the bank. By night, it would leave the water and crawl up the nearest hill and wrap itself around it, around the whole hill, 3 times, the story says. Its body left a spiral groove worn into the slope that people swore you could still see for generations after. That hill is a real place. Locals still call it Worm Hill. And now the valley has a dragon, a full-grown one. It empties the countryside the way a plague would. It takes the sheep off the fields. It takes the cattle. It pulls the milk from the cows, and in the worst of the tellings, it takes the children who wander too close to the water. Whole farms are abandoned. People bar their doors at dusk and listen to something enormous moving in the dark outside. They try to fight it. Of course they do. Brave men, knights, neighbors go out with swords. And here they discover the worst thing about this particular monster. You can cut it. You can hack a piece clean off, and the piece simply slides back and rejoins the body, and the wound closes. And the thing is whole again, and now it's angry. Every man who tries dies. So the valley does the only thing left. It pays. They learn that if they fill a great stone trough with milk, the milk of 9 cows every single day, the worm will drink it and leave them be. And if they don't, if the trough run dries even once, it goes into a rage and it tears up trees by the roots, and it wraps that hill and squeezes until the ground itself seems to groan. So every morning, 9 cows are milked into the trough, and a great English county gets down on its knees and feeds a monster to be allowed to live, year after year. And far away in another country, a knight is finally coming home, with no idea that the ruin he's about to ride into is something he started with his own 2 hands on a Sunday morning a lifetime ago. John Lambton comes home after 7 years, and he doesn't recognize his own home. The fields are empty, the farms are shut. His father, old now, and worn down to almost nothing, has spent 7 years feeding a dragon out of a milk trough just to keep it from the door. And when John asks how this happened, when it started, where the thing even came from, the story finds its way back to a well, and a fishing rod, and a boy who threw something into the dark and rode off to war. Imagine that. Imagine coming home a better man, 7 years scrubbed clean, only to find that the great evil eating your homeland is the one thing you left behind. John decides he's going to kill it, or die trying. And because he's no longer a fool, he's going to ask for help from a wise woman who lives nearby, a cunning woman, the kind of figure every one of these valleys had, someone half feared, half trusted, who knew things. She tells him the truth first, and it's a hard one. "This is your doing," she says. "Yours. No other man can undo it. If the worm is going to die, it has to die by your hand." Then she tells him how. "Take your armor," she says, "and have every inch of it studded with spearheads, blades. Turn yourself into a thing that cannot be held. Then go and stand on the rock in the middle of the river, in the running water, and fight it there. Not on land, in the river, because the current will carry away whatever you cut off before it can crawl back and rejoin." John listens. John nods. This is a plan. This could work. And then the wise woman says, "There's one more thing." And this is where the story turns cold. "When the worm is dead," she tells him, "the very first living creature you see you must kill, at once, whatever it is, because that is the price. If you kill the worm and spare that first living thing, then no lord of the House of Lambton will die peacefully in his bed, not for 9 generations. 9 generations cursed. For mercy? John goes home to plan the death of the monster he made, and he makes one arrangement, one small, sensible human arrangement, that is going to go so wrong that people are still telling this story 700 years later. Here's the arrangement. John can't have just anyone be the first living thing he meets. It has to be planned. So he goes to his father and they agree on a signal. John will go down to the river alone. He'll fight the worm, and if he wins, he will lift his hunting horn and blow 3 long blasts. That's the sign. On 3 blasts of the horn, the father is to release John's favorite hound, send the dog running down to the river, and John will kill the hound as the first living thing. A loyal animal, yes, but a life the family can bear to give. The curse gets its due, and no Lambton has to raise a blade against another. Simple, agreed. And John Lambton walks down to the water in his armor of knives. And now you know this part, because you saw it already. Rock in the middle of the river, the cold water past his knees, the thing coming up out of the black, wrapping around him, squeezing the way it killed every man before him. Only John doesn't cut at it. He doesn't have to. He just holds on and lets it crush him against the blades. And every time it tightens, it opens itself up a little more. And the pieces it loses don't crawl back this time. The river takes them, sweeps them downstream into the dark before they can find their way home. It takes a long time, but the water runs dark and the coils go slack. And at the end of it, John is still standing on his rock, and the Lambton Worm is dead, gone down the river in pieces. It's over. He's exhausted, he's alive, and he lifts the horn to his lips and he blows it 3 times, just as they agreed. Up at the house, his father hears it, and his father forgets everything. Because think about what those 3 notes mean to an old man. They don't mean release the dog, they mean my son is alive, my son beat it, my son is coming home. And 7 years of fear and grief come apart in him all at once, and he does the most human thing there is. He runs out of the house, down toward the river, arms open to reach his boy. And John looks up, and the first living thing he sees coming toward him is his own father. He can't. Of course he can't. He has just turned himself into a weapon and killed a dragon with his body, and the one thing on earth he can't do is raise that blade against the old man running to embrace him. So he doesn't. He lets his father reach him. He holds him. And then, too late, far too late, he blows the horn again, and someone releases the hound, and John kills the dog, but it doesn't count. It was never the first living thing. The bargain is broken. The price goes unpaid. And somewhere, the debt opens and starts to count. 9 generations. So, is any of it real? Let's take the worm first, because that is the easy part. The thing John pulled out of the river has a name, and it's not dragon. Look again at the description. Long, black, no scales, no proper fins, and a row of round holes down each side of its head where a face should be. That's a lamprey. Lampreys are real, they're ancient, and they still live in English rivers, including the Wear. They are jawless. Instead of a mouth, they have a round sucker ringed with rings of teeth, and along each side of the body they have a line of little round breathing holes. Pull one up on a line with no idea what it is, but I promise you would throw it down a well too. The monster of this story starts as a real animal that a real boy could have held in his hand and been disgusted by. And the word worm? That's not a mistake either. In Old English, worm meant serpent, dragon. The Norse said ormur. The dragon that kills Beowulf is called a worm. For thousands of years across the whole north of Europe, worm was simply the word for great coiling monster that guards a place and blights the land. The Lambton Worm isn't a story about an earthworm getting big. It's England's own local dragon, the same dragon Norway had, Iceland had, and Germany had, and this valley gave it an address. So that's the worm, a hideous real fish from a very old word, solved, which leaves the part that won't solve, the curse. Because here's the thing about the Lambton. They were real, and a strange number of them did die badly. The family kept its lands and its power for centuries. And folk memory in County Durham insists that generation after generation, the Lords of Lambton didn't die quietly. One fell in battle, one died of his wounds, one, it said, dropped dead in his carriage while crossing the bridge over the very river where the worm went down. 9 generations of real family and a local certainty passed down, written down that the head of the house would never get the gift of dying peacefully in his own bed. Now, every old family has deaths in it. Battles were common, accidents were common. You could line up the misfortunes of almost any dynasty and call it a curse if you wanted to. But that's not quite what folklore does here. Look at the shape of it. The curse doesn't come first and the death follows. It's the other way around. A real family suffers a real, unsettling run of violent ends, and the people around them reach back to the past. Find a boy and a well and a broken promise, and tie the whole thing off with a reason. The monster explains the misfortune. The broken bargain explains the blood. That's what these stories are for, not to scare children, although they do. They exist to make something bearable, to take a run of grief that has no cause, and give it a cause, and a shape, and a beginning. Because a cursed family is a terrible thing, but a family destroyed by pure, meaningless bad luck is somehow worse, and much harder to live beside. So, is the Lambton Worm real? The lamprey is real. You could catch one out of the Weir this year. Worm Hill is real. You can stand on it. The family is real, and their dead are real. And the strange, stubborn certainty that they died under a debt is written down in more places than a made-up thing has any right to be. The only part that was never real is the dragon coiled 3 times around the hill. And even that the valley didn't invent from nothing. It took a real fish and a 1,000-year-old word for a serpent and a great family's run of bad luck, and it braided them together into one story that could carry all 3. That's the part I keep coming back to. This whole enormous legend, the dragon, the milk, the river, the curse, all of it hangs off one careless moment. A boy who couldn't be bothered to go to church, pulling something ugly off a hook and dropping it down a well to make it someone else's problem, and spending the rest of his life, and 9 lifetimes after his, paying for the thing he threw into the dark and walked away from. So here's my question, and I do read the comments. Do you think the Lambtons believed it? Generation after generation, burying their dead. Do you think they truly thought a dragon did it? Or is a curse the kindest story a grieving family can tell itself? Be honest, tell me down below. If you enjoyed this one, hit like and subscribe, because the next thing I want to dig up is another worm. A dragon that haunted a European swamp for centuries, until the day someone dug a monstrous skull out of the ground, built a statue around it and started worshipping it in the town square, and only much later found out exactly what kind of animal that skull belonged to. Thank you for sitting with me tonight. I'm glad you're here. I'll see you next time.